Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Bitely. I'm with Martin Waymeyer, a public relations firm based here in Lansing, and we provide public relations support to Michigan Future. I'd like to welcome everyone to this virtual roundtable this morning, where we have Lou Glazer and Paul Hillegonds, who are going to speak on the Working Parents Tax Credit. Lou will speak and Paul will go after him, and then we will open it up to Q&A. So if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to put it into the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on folks at the end. All right, Lou, I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I thought what I'd do is start with just a description of what the proposal is, then do a brief explanation of why we've proposed this, and then turn it over to Paul, who's a longtime Michigan Future board member, to talk about the sort of philosophical underpinnings of the effort. So the proposal is to add to the earned income tax credit a per child payment which we're calling a working parents tax credit. So you have to be an EITC recipient to be eligible for this new tax cut. And you have to have at least $10,000 in earnings from work to be eligible. The credit would be $5,000 per child for children under the age of 3 and $2,500 for children older than 3 and under the age of 6. So that, I mean, that is basically the proposal, and the ideal would be to make the payments monthly if it is doable. You know, the EITC currently is paid once a year. We'd really rather pay this monthly. It's a question of whether Treasury administratively can do that or not. But we are going to try to do it monthly if possible. It will be considered. I mean, we're going to advocate for consideration of this as part of the fiscal year 2025 budget. So it's something that will be on the table for the budget conversation next year. But we're committed, if it's not implemented this year, to working on getting something like this implemented long term. There are two reasons for the proposal. The main one is, as we lay out in the fact sheet that we provided you, is that the cost of raising young children is the most expensive for any working family. So we wanted to target this at families with the greatest, low-wage workers with the greatest difficulty of paying the bills, particularly paying for childcare, which both turns out to be a benefit for, obviously for the family, but also because it's an incentive to go to work, is a benefit for employers who are interested in pulling more people in the labor market, where childcare is one of the reasons why some parents are not in the labor market. But the second reason is that it also is the most powerful antidote to what people call the benefit cliff, which is where, as benefits phase out, the amount of money that you keep from working and working more gets reduced. This is the most powerful way that the state can deal with that. The proposal, if implemented as we've proposed it, which would cover, which provide a per child credit up for those younger than the age of 6, would cover 270,000 Michigan children. Probably, I mean, this is hard because we don't really have the estimates. Probably 150 to 200,000 households at an annual cost of about $1 billion. So that's the basic proposal. Why don't I turn it over to Paul to talk a little bit more about the rationale behind it.
Thanks, Lou. I am a longtime member of Michigan Future, along with a number of other board members who have different partisan backgrounds. We're very much a bipartisan group that has focused over time really on the changing Michigan economy as we've transitioned from a manufacturing economy to more of a knowledge-based economy nationally. We have seen our per capita income drop in the country. I believe, Lou, we're now 39 out of 50 states in our per capita income. And it reflects what is a changing economy. So Michigan Future has really focused on what do we do to help our citizens weather this transition. My own evolution really started back in the legislature when, as a minority, Republicans issued a child care report. And even in the late 1980s, we were identifying child care access affordability as a major problem for not only employees, but employers who were seeing a lot of turnover in their workforce because of the child care pressures on families. Today, with the support of United Way of Michigan, we have an annual report on the so-called ALICE challenge, asset limited, income constrained employed families. And the latest report, I believe, has us over 40% of our 4 million households in Michigan that struggle to afford basics like housing, childcare, food, transportation, and healthcare. And that is an issue that reflects a changing economy, and one that we all should be concerned about. Another step in my own evolution was my last job working with the Michigan Health Endowment Fund, and working through a grant with Sevilla, human-centered design. And Sevilla was working with the state at the time, this was during the Snyder administration, on how to take a SNAP benefit application that was over 60 pages long, and 6 months on average to wade through for those seeking SNAP benefits, how to streamline that process. And ultimately, that has led to work with the Whitmer administration on Project Reform, taking 5 different applications for human services benefits down to 1, and greatly reducing the length of the application and the time it takes to apply for benefits. But that raised for me the question, and for our Michigan Future board members, why not use the tax code to simply provide cash benefits and trust our Michigan families who are income constrained to make the decisions that support their families and allow them to continue working. Again, this is a benefit for employed families, working poor families that are struggling to make ends meet. And so we were a supporter with a broad coalition for increasing the earned income tax credit at the Michigan level from 5% to 30%. Thankfully enacted on a bipartisan basis in this legislature. And we are now seeking to expand that support, again, focused on children in families that are struggling to make ends meet. I am absolutely convinced that this tax code credit would make, for many families, the opportunity for childcare and continuing work and improved work possible. I think it's the most efficient way to provide support for our families. It is something that is needed in the state, and I hope that, similar to the work on the earned income tax credit, we can create a broad coalition of support that really covers the spectrum, from conservative Republicans to liberal Democrats, who see this as an efficient way to provide needed support to our Michigan families. So that's why I'm supporting this proposal. And Lou, unless you have more to add, I think we can take some questions.
Yeah, the one thing I forgot to mention is that the earned income tax credit, a maximum in 2023 for a family with 3 children is now $63,000. So this would cover households who have work earnings of 10,000 up to total household income in the low 60,000s. So I see one question here from about Claire about other states. As far as I know, the only state that has anything remotely similar to what we're proposing is California, which provides a $1,000 addition to their state earned income tax credit for young children per household. So it's not per child. And their earned income tax credit only covers households with incomes, I think, of 30,000 or less. So it's much less expansive than what we're proposing. As far as I know, that's the only state that has anything like what we're proposing.
We're going to keep the questions going here. Feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, and we can call on you. Lou, Paul, we do have another question here. Andrew from MERS. With Michigan's aging workforce, what percentage of the workforce in Michigan would be brought into the labor market with this tax credit?
Yeah, that's really, so here's what, well, first of all, you have to have young kids. So, it's the proportion of households that have kids under 6, and I don't know, and also have, earnings between $10,000 and $60,000. So I'm more than happy to try to figure out what the answer to that is, but I don't think it's all that easy. The one thing that we do know is that there's been extensive research over a number of years that have demonstrated that the earned income tax credit of all the federal programs is the one that pulls particularly low-wage women into the labor market more than anything else. So it's got a proven ability to pull people into the labor market, which is why so many employers supported the expansion of the credit from 60 to 30%. And we're going to work to build that same coalition for this proposal.
I just add, Lou, with the attention of the Grow Michigan Council on our population trends and challenges. Yes, one answer is to have older workers working longer, but another answer is to make Michigan more family friendly for younger families, and this is a step in that direction.
All right, our next question comes from David Eggert, Cranes. He says, quick clarification, would households with 3-year-olds qualify for the $5,000 or the $2,500 credit?
Right, so the $5,000 is up to the age of 3. So 3-year-olds would be the $2,500.
All right, our next question comes from Kyle Davidson. He wonders, have you pitched this to any members of the legislature? If so, what does support look like? Is there any policy that has been introduced?
So we're just starting. So there's no introduction. There's no coalition members. I mean, this is sort of a recommendation that the Michigan Future Board has actually been working on for the last 6 months or so. We have had some discussions with legislators and we'll do more. I mean, this is pretty similar to what happened 2 years ago when we recommended the 60% increase in the earned income tax credit. We put it out first. We then started talking to legislators. We got legislative support to get it introduced. We're going to sort of follow the same path with this.
All right, do we have any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand or submit into the chat.
Looks like there is one from Kyle Davidson in the chat.
Yeah, I think that's the one we just answered.
Yeah, that's the one we just went through.
Oh, great.
Dave Eggert asks, can you talk about the budget implications? Is there $1 billion available for 2024, 2025?
So the simple answer to that is, of course, there's money available. I mean, the case that we're going to be making to potential coalition partners and then ultimately to policymakers is that the childcare crisis is a very high priority in Michigan. So is dealing with the benefit cliff. Our values are, as Paul explained, is that dealing with both should be at the top of the state's spending priorities. And the best way to do it, and the only way to do it that serves 270,000 kids, I want to talk about scale for a moment, is with this kind of tax cut for working families. So we're going to make the case that this is a budget priority. Budgets are value statements. What we're going to argue is that our values and hopefully the state values is supporting hardworking, lower wage Michigan households, particularly those raising young children, should be a budget priority. And if it is a budget priority, then clearly there's always money available to do it. I want to talk a little bit about the scale question, which is one of the reasons why we adopted this income net program philosophy. The current child care subsidy, which the state has expanded, last year, we were told, served 26,000 kids in Michigan out of something like 300,000 that were eligible. Our tax cut will benefit 270,000 Michigan kids. You cannot help these large number of lower wage working households unless you do it through the tax system, as Paul explained.
Okay, our next question comes from Clara Hendrickson. Some opponents of the earned income tax credit argue that it allows employers to pay low wages that don't support families. Can you respond to that criticism?
You want to try that, Paul?
I think I do believe in the marketplace, and I think we're seeing lower wage employers in the state having to raise wages in order to attract and retain talent, and this makes it possible for families to pay for childcare and get in the workplace, and this does not take away the challenge we have in the state of not enough people in the workplace seeking work, and employers wanting employees and employers will continue to raise wages to attract those employees, but it really doesn't take care of the basic needs like childcare that are part of the mix. So I don't think this will be an incentive for employers at all to reduce wages the opposite is true. I think employers are going to have to raise wages.
Okay, our next question comes from Andrew at MERS. How would this impact the Try Michigan Child Care Pilot Program?
So there's no direct relationship. I mean, you can, obviously TriShare will continue with or without the working parent tax credit. This, to some degree, it provides a source of income for parents who want to participate in TriShare and can't pay for it. Although the reality is the TriShare participation rate at the moment is really, really, really small. You know, that one of the reasons for this proposal is that sort of the TriShare and the subsidy program are reaching such a small proportion of working families that we really do need to find a different approach that's much more efficient, easy to administer, and can reach far more households.
Andrew does have a follow-up question to that.
Sure.
Wouldn't this just end up being the state paying for the childcare and for the parent?
Well, how the money's used is up to the parent. I mean, so parents can use the money for food, rent. I mean, it doesn't have to go to child care. I mean, the whole notion is behind both the expansion of the earned income tax credit and even more now with the working parent tax credit is that it's 6 in 10 Michigan jobs don't pay middle class wages. And we have to figure out, and the reason why those households are struggling is because they don't have enough. This is the Alice report. They don't have enough income to pay all the bills, including childcare, but not limited to childcare. So we want a Michigan economy that is providing adequate income for all parents. And from our perspective, this is the best public policy lever that's available to help working parents.
Yeah, and I'll just add, Lou, over time, we've built a substantial human services network where we ask income-constrained families to apply for benefits. And over time, I think we've created so many barriers to successful application for people who are eligible. This is a different form of state assistance that is far more efficient and reaches people who need the help. It's a statement that we don't have to raise more questions than benefits. It's a statement that we trust people to support their families.
Yep. You know, which, and once again, just to emphasize, this is for working families. I mean, a lot of the critique of some of these programs is these are people who get up every day, like all of us, and work hard to earn a living. It's just that they're in jobs that don't pay them. So our values is that if anybody deserves a tax cut, it is those families.
Do we have any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. If folks would like to schedule further interviews with Lou or Paul, please reach out to me. I've put my contact information in the chat, and you all should have received emails from me in the days leading up to this. So feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to connect you. But otherwise, thank you all for attending today.
Thank you.